Today, we welcome Thomas Shivers with Fourstone Partners, based out of Pennsylvania. When he started the business, they had rapid growth, and the culture he started with was not the culture that was going to sustain them. We're going to talk today about how he had to pivot. Thomas Shivers, welcome to How I Turned the Corner.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about what you guys do over at Fourstone Partners.
So first and foremost, we're a consulting company. So we started 11 years ago purely as a consulting company in the workers' compensation sector of healthcare. And we help commercialize other companies. And not only do we do everything from the go-to-market strategy to, all the things involved with starting a business. The differentiator for Fourstone is we actually represent companies in the space. So we outsource sales. It's a brand new thing. Well, 11 years ago it was. Nobody else is doing it the way that we've done it. Over the years, though, we've morphed into developing and selling our own products and services as well. So half the business is a consulting firm, and the other half of the business sells our own products and services.
Okay, so really diverse then employee group that you have as well then because of that.
We sure do.
Yeah. So when we first chatted, you had about 83 employees. Is that the size you are still?
It's about the same.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it fluctuates a little bit, but we're right about in that 80 mark now.
Okay. So what was it like in the early days? How would you describe your culture in the early days?
I mean, the business started in my basement with me.
Okay.
One of the things I'm really proud of the firm is that we've never had an investor. We've never had any funding at all. It's all been self-funded from day one. And the beginning was just me. And then slowly but surely, I built up a client base and we had to go hire some folks. This is my fourth office that we've been in. So we continue to grow and expand. Even with the pandemic hitting and everybody working from home and those kinds of things, we're even outgrowing our space now a little bit. So it's been a great ride.
So how would you describe your culture now?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that's really, really important to us is the culture of the firm. And, we are and always have been a pretty flat organization. So there is no bureaucracy. It is a meritocracy. The best idea wins. It doesn't matter who generates that idea. I think when you look at our culture, it's very much like an athletic team. We practice hard, we play hard. Everybody roots for each other. And we have there's a zero tolerance policy in our firm for anybody who's trying to undermine the betterment of the organization. And we find that when you ask a lot of people and everyone knows that you're asking a lot of everyone, if you find the right people, no one wants to let their teammate down, right? So no one wants to be the outlier. We reward everyone incredibly well. I think we're a generous firm in all ways. And, we expect the team to work hard for us and for each other. And it's worked out really, really well.
So what do you do when you have one of those employees who starts to, I guess I would say, be a little bit toxic? What do you do? So
we give everyone, depending on the infraction, right? Depending on the nature of the infraction, we'll give everyone before. First of all, I think it starts before we hire, right? So in the interviewing process, in the vetting process, we let everybody know about the culture of the firm and how important that culture is to the integrity of the firm. And we say that we don't accept drama. Everyone's accountable to everyone. The right idea wins. Everybody will have a chance to do very well. We have a history of that. There's evidence of that. So we let people know that if they create any sort of unnecessary drama, that there's not going to be a tolerance for it. So when that happens, and it inevitably does, we'll have, the HR protocols have to kick in, and we'll have the warnings, and we'll do everything the right way. I think with us, we act very quickly, and we don't let things fester. So as soon as there's an issue, as soon as there's an issue, we hit it right away.
Mm-hmm.
And we do it professionally, and we do it in a kind way, but we do it in a very firm way. And when we've had to let people go, it's never been a surprise to them, right? So I think that matters to the culture too, because what we've all learned over time is when you let the negative people or the quote unquote bad employees, the toxic employees, when you let them survive, it really affects the better employees, because they see that this behavior is allowed to happen, there's no consequence, and then they start losing confidence in the integrity of the firm, and it affects them. And one thing that I've learned over time is, negativity seeks companionship. No one wants to be negative by themselves. So when you have a negative person, and think about this, they will always try to find somebody else to be negative with. And as soon as that happens, then they will find somebody else to be negative with. So before the negativity can find its companion, we just try to stop it. And that's true in companies, that's true in friendships, that's true in athletic teams, where as soon as there's a naysayer, they're going to recruit somebody else to see their point of view. And now you have division. Mm-hmm. We just don't tolerate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've experienced the same thing. That's been one of the joys of running a business, has been able to really not have to tolerate the toxic employees and really move fast when there is a toxic employee. But it seems like so many people do hang on to people because they're great performers, or they're doing really well with a certain customer, or have this technical knowledge. I don't agree with that. I don't think there's anybody whose skills are so valuable that it's worth keeping them around and making the culture suffer. And it sounds like you feel the same way.
There are certainly, high performers, and depending on what role you have in a firm. As an example, we started as a sales organization. We're a great sales organization. And when you have high performing salespeople, you're going to get your share of divas. That's just the nature of who they are. They seek attention. They want to be acknowledged for their greatness. They want the spotlight. So we have to manage that a little bit. And we do. I don't want to give the impression that, everybody comes in and folds their hands and everything's great all the time. It's just when it starts to affect somebody else, or the reputation of the firm, we can't have it. But nobody is irreplaceable, to your point. And I think a lot of the things that companies fear, and I've worked in big companies before, and I was probably the worst corporate employee of all time, because I just don't tolerate the bureaucracy. But you see, even in big companies, people hanging on to toxic people because of the company's fear that they'll lose a client, mm-hmm. or the company's fear that it'll be a real negative to the business. And what happens over time is you see that all these people that we were so afraid to lose, well, once they leave, the business doesn't end. The mm-hmm. sky doesn't fall. And I think that very few people, there are some, but very few are irreplaceable.
Mm-hmm. So if you were to go and, give some advice to a budding entrepreneur, founder, about building culture, what would be some of your things that you would tell them now, especially with lessons that you've learned over time?
Yeah, I think the mistake that I've made the most over the years is, I'm a fiercely loyal person. And sometimes I've let that get the better of me, meaning the advice that I would give is act quickly. In your heart, the right thing to do. And we've kept people for too long early on. We kept giving them second and third and fourth chances. Some of that was because of the fear factor that, well, if they leave, we don't have anybody to replace them, or they have a client relationship. A lot of it was just interpersonally trying to be nice people and help people out. And every single time we've said, we can't do that ever again. Mm-hmm. And now we've been to the point, we're well into our evolution as a firm where we don't anymore. But early on we did. So the advice I would give is to act quickly on anybody who's toxic to the culture, add quickly on anybody who you know is not going to be a good fit, because it's in their best interest as well, right? But mostly to preserve the great people in your firm, you really got to act quickly on those that aren't.
Mm-hmm. So I noticed that you, or you had mentioned before that you do have a fair number of openings right now. Like what kinds of people do you look for?
I mean, it's so hard. It's so hard to hire now. It really is. Something shifted during COVID or after COVID. We hire more for attitude than we do for specific skill sets. You know, obviously, if you're coming into the IT section of the firm, you have to have very, very good technical skills and understand technology well. But for the most part, we hire for attitude. We hire for transitional skills, and we can teach a lot of the specifics to our business. But we need somebody who's a hard worker, a team player, not an excuse maker, somebody who's a grinder. They understand that the results are the most important thing. We're culturally, we're a Philadelphia firm, meaning we give people a hard time. It's the way that we show affection in Philly. If we're giving you a hard time, that means things are good. The problems come when we stop giving you a hard time for something, because then we've kind of lost you, right? So we need that same culture. You got to be a little bit sarcastic. You got to be able to take a shot. If you walk into a meeting and you spill something on your shirt, everybody's going to talk about it, right? We're going to bring it to your attention, and we're probably going to bring it up the next 3 or 4 meetings. And the thing that's great about our firm is everybody is involved in that. No one is immune, right? So if I do something, if one of my executives do something, we're going to give each other a very affectionate hard time. So we hire for people that like that dynamic, because if you don't, then it's going to end poorly, right? If on the hiring side you're very difficult, right? We got to hire the right people. Then on the firing side, it's easy. Where when you just hire anybody, or you're not disciplined, then it becomes a problem on the other side. So we really hire for interpersonal skills. We hire for again, I like athletes. I like people who compete. I like people who understand that you're not going to win every time, so you got to keep grinding. And we like people that have a little bit of that edge to them, where you can give and take a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. So then, so tell us a little bit about then what have been some of the biggest changes that you've experienced in the last couple of years with your culture?
I mean, the whole world changed. I was a fan of having everybody in the office, and there's no argument, right? There's no argument at all that people are better when they're together, right? They are. There's no argument that we're better working from home. And right now we have about probably 60% of our folks work from home. And there's benefits to that. Obviously, it allows you to hire the best people regardless of geography. We have people in Colorado and Florida and New York and all over. We're not just here in Philly. But culturally, we've had to understand that, the balance of power, I think, has shifted from employer to employee, where the employees really, I've said this all along. Tell me if you believe this, but my philosophy in life has always been, well, I'll ask you the question. In any relationship, who has the power?
In any relationship, who has the power? Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I think it depends on the relationship.
No, just think about it for a second, and I'll give you our answer, and I think you'll find it to be intriguing. But I think the person that has the power in any relationship is the one that cares the least.
Okay.
So think about that for a second, right? If you don't care as much, you have all the power because the other person cares more.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be that the employer had all the power. You needed a job. We have rules. We have this. You can't take tomorrow off. You've got, all the stuff that we grew up with. That is completely shifted.
Mm-hmm.
Because it used to be that the employee cared more. I need a job. I need this job.
Mm-hmm.
Now the employees don't care. Like, they care about the company. They want to do a good job, but it's so easy to go get a new job right now because there are so many openings that what we found, to answer your question directly, is we have to be much more flexible. You know, we have to cater a little bit to the new world order. You know, we have to let people have flexible time. We have to let people work remotely. When, you know, it used to be if you walked into a job interview and the first question you asked was, how many vacation days do I get? You'd be shown the door.
Right.
Right now, that's going to be in the top 5 questions. So we have to answer it differently than before. And it matters to folks. So I think the work-life thing has changed so much that we've had to adapt. Because again, I think that the power, for lack of a better term, has shifted to the employee base because they care less.
Yeah, I do a lot of speaking around the country, and my latest talk has been all about that, around how we as leaders have to be so much more flexible. I say
Absolutely.
flexibilize to thrive. And basically, like any policy that you've had or any rigid thing you've had in your culture is no longer going to work. Everything needs to be questioned. Everything needs to be examined. Because a policy-based agenda is just not going to work anymore because people are needing so much flexibility and are expecting that.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. The only absolutes are those behavioral things that are just intolerable. You know, we can't have any of those. But for the most part, you're exactly right. You know, it's completely shifted. And because there are so many more jobs than there are employees now, you know, we've had to change our ways a little bit. Now, again, if you hire the right people on the front side, you're never going to be perfect. But if you hire the right people, it mitigates that issue a little bit. But if not, you know, and I'll give you great examples. I don't know if you're seeing this all over the place, but we went last year. There was probably a 3 or 4 month period where 1 in 10 interviews, 1 in 10 even showed up.
Really? Well, that's interesting.
We couldn't figure it out. They
Yeah.
wouldn't. We would confirm the day before. Just wouldn't show up.
Yeah.
And we thought the first couple of times it's like that's really unusual. And then it was at least over the course of that 6 month period, at least 60%, 70% of the time they wouldn't show. So we celebrated a little bit when they even showed up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that's how hard it is to get good employees now. That's why when you get them and you know they're really good, you got to keep them. And we've got to be more flexible. We've got to be more generous than other companies maybe have been historically. I think it's in our nature. It's in our culture to share the wealth. It's in our culture to reward everyone. It's in our culture, you know, where all our bonuses are based on 3 levels. 1 is how well did the company do? 2 is how well did your department do? And 3 is how well did you do? So it's all about team. But I mean, we've got to meet their demands a little bit more than historically we've had to. And I don't think that's ever going to change.
I don't think so either. We've been noticing lately with the companies that we consult with that sometimes the company is not actually really clear on what their value proposition is, what makes them a great place to work. And so if we could just talk about that for a minute, I would love to kind of go a little bit deeper around that. But when you get really clear around like what makes you a better place to work than all the other employer competitors are that, you know, your future employees are looking at and examining, calling out what makes you different in the job advertisement, through the interviewing process, through the onboarding process, and then of course, you know, through the managing process. But it was the piece that we've been finding is kind of missing when you've got recruiting challenges like that or hiring challenges like that. They're just not connecting with why you are a better place to work than all the other places they're looking at. So that might be something to examine.
I think what we try to do too is we encourage people that we really want to hire to talk to some of our employees if they're deciding on our job versus different jobs. You know, one of the things in our culture, one of the things we'll say right away is, and I think a lot of people say it, but we live it. This is it's a family business. Like we treat each other like family. We care about one another. We know about one another. And there's never been one instance in 11 years where if somebody had a personal issue, we told them that they had to put that on hold to work a little bit. Not once. They know now that you go take care of that. We'll figure out the work stuff later. Right. And what you find is, when you have employees who have kids, who have daycare issues, who have, literally a lot of pet issues, those kinds of things, then if they know that, look, Fourstone cares about me and my life and my family, and I can take care of these things and not have to worry about any repercussions at work, that, that over time really builds some trust and some loyalty and allegiance, where we're not in a world anymore where loyalty and allegiance mean much. So we try to create that by being very, again, generous with our time and the understanding of the difficulties people have in life, and never, ever having them worry about that. Mm-hmm. Now, again, if people take advantage of it, if it's not genuine, then we have issues. But I think what you find is when you are genuine about it, then people don't take advantage.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the other way I would phrase that is that it's more of a symbiotic relationship now, meaning that if you're loyal to them by giving them that flexibility and that trust, they will be loyal to you. It's when I think it's incongruent or not consistent between the two parties. And then maybe it comes back to what you said a minute ago about who has the power. Well, it's the one I think that is actually, I think the power is reduced when there's equality among how we're both feeling about each other.
Yeah, you want them to care as much as we do.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the power shift. Mm-hmm. If they start to care as much about our job because they know that it's difficult to replicate that environment in other companies, then they care more about their job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then it sort of evens out, right?
Yep.
So we want them to care about the company. We want them to care about the job as much as we care about them. And I think we do everything reasonably possible to accomplish that. We're also, I think one of the things culturally that makes us a little bit different is we kind of pride ourselves on the no excuses, kind of thing, where the dog ate my homework, those kinds of things will not make it through a conversation in our firm at every level. So we try to filter out all the corporate nonsense. We try to filter out all the buzzwordy stuff. And when somebody doesn't know what they're talking about, we'll say, what are you talking about? Because all you did was talk in circles. And they'll say it to me as well if I do that. So, I think we're creating a place where people can feel comfortable, where they can feel comfortable making a mistake. We're entrepreneurs. You got to make mistakes. You got to push hard. And I have bigger issues with people that haven't made a mistake for me versus those that have, based on the nature and the genesis of the mistake. Because we want to hire people that make us smarter. We want to hire people that make us better. The last thing I'm going to do is hire this great person and tell them exactly what to do, because that's not making us a smarter firm. And I think when you're open about that, and when people see that, anybody in the firm can walk into my office with a suggestion about anything, and we'll listen to it and take it seriously and implement it if it works, and reward them for that, that it does make it a little bit harder to find that for them in other places. And, in our management team and in our leadership teams, we have pretty good retention, and I think that's why.
Well, that's the key indicator is retention. If you're losing people, especially if you're noticing it's at a certain period of time, like one of our customers loses people regularly in the first 90 days. But then once they stay past 90 days, they keep them for years. So it's like, that's the period of time we need to be focusing on. In our world, that's the onboarding and the training and the job, and making sure the manager really knows how to coach and encourage, build them up so they believe in themselves and can do the work. But if people, and if you're retaining people and your executive team long-term too, that's awesome. That's a really,
we're a little bit different in that I think the way that we approach that retention piece, and I'm not saying you suggested this, but I'm saying others do. It's a reciprocal relationship, right? So it's not just coddling them. It's not just making sure that they're happy and all's well. We put expectations on them. And we expect them to be able to do certain things by certain times in the onboarding process. And when they're a little bit slow to progress, obviously we're an understanding firm, but we approach it more as almost like I would see a challenge of, hey, you need to be here by now and you're not. Why? Instead of, it's okay, we'll do more training. And what's happened is people have responded to that because we treat them like adults and we treat them like professionals and we treat everybody like an executive. Doesn't matter if they're day one, right out of high school and they're in our billing program, or they're right out of college and they enter into our lab program or whatever it is. We'll treat them like they've been working for 20 years. And I think they like that. And I think that gets the best out of them. You know, we don't have a lot of tolerance for spoon feeding.
No.
You know, and I'm proud of that. And we like people who don't want to be spoon fed. We like people who want to be challenged and who want to bring some challenge to us. And I think for us, the retention that we have at our leadership level is because of that. You know, I've been in big companies before. I'm sure you have too, and your clients have too, where the person with the biggest title is always right. It's not a way to live. It's not a way to run a business. And I think when we challenge people right away, they're a little bit surprised, but then they warm up to it pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I agree completely. You don't want to spoon feed them, but I do think a lot of times the sort of period of time of truly onboarding them and understanding how confident they are and how good they are at the job, that gets kind of sloughed over very quickly. And what ends up, I mean, I've observed thousands of people now in the work I've been doing with this. I've noticed there's a period of time where people's ability is low, but their confidence is high. And that's when we as managers have that feeling of, oh, you're so entitled. Who do you think you are? Right.
Yeah.
The reality is that they're feeling more confident, and we have to communicate what they don't know and then help them understand what they don't know and continue to train them. And then there's this remarkable shift that happens, which is frightening, which is one day they will walk in and lose all their confidence because now they have so much context for what they don't know. They think, I can't do this. And now as a manager or a leader, we have to say to them, no, we believe in you.
Yeah.
We know you can do this. We just need to keep practicing it. And now you got to go into that coach mode, which I know with your sports background, you understand that as well. But I think
and there's nothing better, right? There's nothing better as a coach or as a manager or as a leader than watching somebody do something that they previously couldn't do.
Right. Totally agree.
And that's the greatest feeling as a coach, as a manager, as a leader, whatever. And you're right about people walking in thinking in any profession, you know, they can do anything, confidence through the roof. And then when they find out how hard things really are, it gets wavered a little bit. But then watching them actually be able to do things they couldn't previously do and do them well is really rewarding. I mean, that's one of the better things about, you know, owning and running a company is watching the people develop. And I've got a bunch, you know, who have developed so much in the 5 or 6 years that they've been with me, these specific people, that it's one of the great pleasures of my professional career is watching them develop and become these incredible executives when, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, they weren't, you know, and now, you know, they're as good as anybody I know.
I love that. Well, thank you. I think that's a perfect place to end on, Thomas. So thank you so much for your time today and sharing your wisdom on all this. I think a lot of people will benefit from your years of experience here. So thank you so much.
It's always my pleasure. Thank you so much. I love what you're doing.
Thanks.